If your nervous system had a remote control, well, you're holding it right now, and it is your breath. But here's the problem, because most people are using it backwards. They breathe in a way that creates anxiety, that creates stress, that creates dysregulation without even realizing it. Their breath is fast, it's shallow, it's chaotic, and then they wonder why they can't calm down. And that was me back then, and that's a lot of my clients and students when they first come to me. And then they discover the breath and their life starts to change. So in this video, I will show you how to flip this switch and turn your breath into the most powerful tool you have to regulate your nervous system. I'm also going to share 3 of the most effective practices to get you started. Because if you understand what I'm about to tell you, namely how the breath impacts your nervous system, you empower yourself and put yourself in the driver's seat of your experience and of your life. But before we jump into the video today, I just want to let you know that I have a course in which you will learn how to access more calm, energy, and focus by using the power of the breath. It covers the best breathing techniques for your daily practice, and it comes with a bunch of guided practices. We have more than 500 students that are loving it, and if you're interested to check it out, I will leave a link below the video. All right, let's get started. Now, the first thing you have to understand is that unhealthy breathing or a dysfunctional breathing pattern results in an unhealthy nervous system or a dysregulated nervous system. They both influence each other at all times. And so there's a bunch of symptoms that are linked to dysfunctional breathing, and a lot of people have no idea about this, right? Anxiety, panic attacks, emotional reactivity, chronic tension, insomnia, right? Sleep issues, overwhelm, fatigue, digestive issues can all be symptoms of an unhealthy breathing pattern. So now let's look under the hood. How does breathing actually impact the nervous system? Like, what is the mechanism? Okay. So as I mentioned in the very beginning, your breath is the remote control for your nervous system. The question is why? Well, your breath is both automatic and voluntary. And that means you are breathing unconsciously right now, right? As you're watching this video, you're not thinking about breathing, but you can also change your breath. If I ask you to hold your breath or to slow down your breath, you can do that. And that is a pretty awesome feature of our breath. It is not the same for your heart, doesn't work for your digestion, but it does work like that for the breath. And that is not random. Your breath is basically the bridge between your body and your mind and your mind and your body. And therefore, it gives you a sort of backstage access to your stress response machinery. And that's pretty cool, but you actually have to know how the machinery works. And so to understand that, we have to just briefly look at the autonomic nervous system and how it works. Our autonomic nervous system is responsible for a bunch of functions in our body. It takes care of many processes and functions in our body. And so there are 2 main branches in our nervous system. We have our sympathetic branch, also abbreviated SNS, and we have our parasympathetic, also abbreviated PNS. Now, our sympathetic nervous system is our gas pedal. Okay, it basically activates energy, and it also puts you into a fight or flight response when you're triggered or when there's danger. Really, really important. And then your parasympathetic essentially is your brake pedal, okay? Helps you move into a rest and digest state, helps you relax, helps you slow down. Very, very important as well for your whole system also to recover, right? We can't always be in sympathetic, and we shouldn't always be in parasympathetic. So they both kind of come and go in waves, right? You're in sympathetic for a while, and then you're in parasympathetic for a while, and that would be the ideal way to live our lives. But that is just not how it works for many or most modern humans. Now, when it comes to the breath and the autonomic nervous system, well, they are very closely interlinked. With every inhale, every single inhale that you take, you stimulate your sympathetic branch, okay? There's a little activation in your body. With every exhale, you activate your parasympathetic branch of the nervous system. So it basically slows you down a little bit. That's really important to know, because if we, for example, were to lengthen our exhale, we experience more calm, okay? We activate more of our parasympathetic branch. If we take a lot of short, sharp inhales, we're creating more activation in our body. Okay, we are triggering the sympathetic branch a lot more. Another way that the breath is connected to our nervous system is that when we're breathing through our nose, we activate more of the parasympathetic nervous system. If we are breathing through the mouth, we're activating more the sympathetic branch of the nervous system. Okay, so even just that has an effect on what activates in your body. So let's say I'm breathing fast, I'm breathing shallow, and I'm mainly breathing up here, my upper chest, right? I'm activating my sympathetic nervous system. Okay, I'm activating energy. But if I then switch to slow, diaphragmatic, nasal breathing, okay, this activates my parasympathetic nervous system. And you can try this out right now. Take a couple fast breaths into the chest and then take a few slow breaths into the belly. And you will notice the difference right away. Now, in addition, if we breathe less air, less volume, and we slow down our breath, we decrease cortisol and adrenaline production in our bodies. Cortisol and adrenaline are two of the main stress hormones in our bodies. And that is beneficial because most of us have way too many stress hormones in the bloodstream, okay? Because we're living very stressful lives. Many of us have a lot of cortisol and adrenaline going on. And so we can use the breath to actually reduce the production of stress hormones, which is pretty awesome. Now, here's an interesting fact, namely, your daily breathing pattern, the way that you breathe day in and day out, the way that you're breathing right now at rest, it reflects your past and it reflects your present. Your breathing pattern can tell me a lot about what you've experienced in your life, and it can tell me a lot as to what you're experiencing right now. Now, if we consciously change how you breathe, if we consciously change and alter your breathing pattern, let it be just for a moment, for a couple of minutes, or let it be in the long term, then you can actually shift how you feel, how you think, and how you behave. And this is huge. This is essentially the magic of the breath and of breath work. Okay, next thing is that the vagus nerve, which many of you probably know, it's probably the most popular and famous nerve on social media. It's the nerve that helps us relax. It helps slow down our system. It's basically makes up the biggest part of our parasympathetic nervous system. And the vagus nerve is stimulated specifically by extended exhales, by humming, by sighing, by belly breathing or diaphragmatic breathing. And that's really powerful to know because the result is then that we shift into a parasympathetic response, which regulates our anxiety, our emotions, our physiology. And I think that's pretty awesome. And lastly, breath work and conscious breathing in general, it helps you increase your interoceptive awareness, or also called somatic awareness, essentially, being aware of what's going on inside your body, any sensations. And that is in and of itself essential for emotional regulation and nervous system regulation. Okay. If we're not aware of what's going on inside of our bodies, then it's actually really hard to regulate. And generally, many of us, as we're living mainly up here, we're not really well connected to our bodies. By practicing breathwork regularly, we can establish this connection or reestablish the connection to our bodies and therefore increase our somatic awareness. So let's talk a little bit more about why a functional breathing pattern is so essential. Okay, I really want to bring this home because just because your breathing is automatic, like it's always happening, right? Because otherwise you'd be dead. But just because it's always happening, it doesn't mean it's optimal. That is the issue here, okay? And so functional breathing in and of itself, and by functional, I really mean healthy breathing, okay? It supports your biology, it supports your physiology, supports your nervous system health all day, every day, okay? As I mentioned, the way you're breathing right now has a direct effect on your nervous system at any moment in time. And so here are a few features of a dysfunctional breathing pattern: breathing too fast, breathing too much volume, breathing with our chest mainly and mouth breathing, okay? And this is mainly at rest, okay? Of course, when you're running, okay, and maybe you're running from a tiger, of course, you're going to be breathing faster. You're going to be taking bigger breaths. You're going to be chest breathing and probably mouth breathing, okay? When I'm doing my tennis practice and my coach makes me run a lot, I'm going to be breathing like that. But it's not how we want to breathe at rest, because all of these, they upregulate the nervous system. They activate our sympathetic branch of the nervous system, which then puts us into a stress response, okay? And essentially, we're then breathing as if we're stressed, even when there's no actual stressor present right now. Yeah. And so therefore, the nervous system stays stuck in survival mode permanently. And that is how many people breathe, right? I'm not making this up. And so what does a functional, healthy breathing pattern look like? Well, nose breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, right? Slow breathing, rhythmic breathing, and quiet breathing. I don't want to hear you breathing. If I hear you breathing, that to me, it shows me that there's something going on here. So one of the biggest shifts that you can make for yourself, for your life, for your nervous system, for the people around you, and collectively really, is to learn to breathe less and not more. And I know this goes against common beliefs, and it probably goes against what, you've learned on social media, but this is really important. We need to learn to breathe less in order to create a functional breathing pattern, a healthy breathing pattern, and therefore a healthy nervous system. And therefore change how we think, how we live, how we behave, how we feel. Now, this graphic is meant to show you in summary as to what the breath nervous system equation looks like. So your unconscious or your conscious breathing pattern, it doesn't really matter. It's the breathing pattern that you have on a day-to-day basis, or if you're changing your breathing pattern in the moment. But this will change your endocrine system. It will change your blood chemistry, right? It will change how much of your stress hormones you produce or not produce. And that will change your nervous system state, which will in turn impact your thoughts and your emotions and your behavior, which in turn will then influence your breathing pattern. And the cycle continues. So why is a daily breathing practice a non-negotiable? This is something I can't stop talking about to my clients, but let's hear it, Connie. Okay, now, modern life essentially equals default dysregulation. So many of us already function with a very dysregulated nervous system, okay? And we don't even know it because our lives are so busy and it's just so normalized. Stress is normalized. Having busy lives is normalized. Many of us carry unprocessed traumas. Many of us learn to suppress our emotions, which causes stress in our bodies as well. We, look at screens all day. Screens are very stimulating. We're generally very overstimulated. There's just so much information going on. We have maybe performance pressure, right? Many of us have very stressful jobs. And many of us, as mentioned, also have trauma patterns, experiences that have not been digested yet and they're still living in our bodies. And so we need to approach daily life kind of like an athlete, to train being more in a parasympathetic state. We're so in sympathetic mode most of the time, we barely allow our bodies to shift into a parasympathetic rest and digest mode to recover, okay? And so a daily breathing practice helps you downregulate chronic stress. It helps you rewire trauma patterns, because if all you've ever known since you were a child was to be in a stress response, then a breathing practice can support your healing journey in learning to shift into a parasympathetic response, okay? And therefore also rewire your nervous system. Helps you increase your vagal tone, which helps increase your heart rate variability, which is an indicator of how stress resilient you are and in your body and your nervous system. Helps improve interoception, your body awareness, as we spoke about just before. Sitting down every day for your breathing practice helps you to overall just create a better and deeper connection with your body. And then lastly, it enhances emotional regulation, because if you do your daily breathing practice, you're going to have a bit more of a parasympathetic baseline than if you didn't do it, because as mentioned, most of us, our baseline is very, very sympathetic. And so a daily breathing practice, it's not just about breathing exercises. It's really nervous system therapy from the inside out, as I like to call it. Because your nervous system, it listens to your breath 24/7, all the time they're communicating. And so my question to you is, what story is my breath telling my body right now? What story is my breath telling my body right now? Now, here are some recommended practices. It's kind of like the 80-20. These are practices. They're like the 20% of practices maybe out there, or even less, that will give you an 80% return on investment. They're very, very effective. They're very simple, but they're extremely effective, right? And I give them to all my clients and students. They all learn this. They learn diaphragmatic breathing, bringing the breath low into the body so that with every inhale, your lower ribs and belly, they move out a bit. And with every exhale, your lower ribs and belly come back in. That's how we want to breathe. This is this functional breathing mechanics. That's how we call it. And then once you have diaphragmatic breathing down, you can add on coherence breathing. By coherence breathing, we mean that our inhales are just as long as our exhales. And so you can be breathing in for 4 seconds and breathing out for 4 seconds, or breathing in for 5 and breathing out for 5. Essentially, we are slowing down our breath. And if you're feeling just a slight air hunger, that's actually a good sign, okay? And then lastly, really, really important, I highly recommend that you do at least 3 daily breathing check-ins. You can set alarms on your phone. Just remember to check in with your breathing several times per day and just notice, how is my breath flowing right now? How is it moving? Is it fast? Is it slow? Is it up in my chest? Is it in my belly? Is it through my nose? Is it through my mouth? And just notice. Just notice. Because once we have awareness, we can actually create change. And so as a reminder, how you breathe is how you live, because the breath is everything. And so if you're curious now to dive even deeper, then check out the link below the video, and maybe you're interested to join more than 500 students in my Breathwork and Nervous System Foundations course. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.